Star Trek didn't obey the laws of physics. It completely destroyed them. Shuttles reached hypersonic speeds, aliens lived, and a cult following was born. These are 17 weird facts about Star Trek you didn't know. And for a bonus, let's just say William Shatner doesn't really love Star Trek fans. Sit back. Let's rewind time. Number 1. When Star Trek first aired its pilot, funds were just a luxury. The role of Captain Picard, or Number 1, was not initially intended for Patrick Stewart. It was originally given to Majel Barrett, girlfriend of creator Gene Roddenberry. She was cheap and played into the narrative of empowering women. But initial audiences didn't see it this way. They thought she was pushy, a little too dramatic, and the thought of a woman didn't make sense to be in such a leadership role. The whole series felt like a failure, but Roddenberry had a solution. Thanks to producer Robert H. Justman, they had a solution. And instead of panicking, Roddenberry took his advice, choosing to cast Patrick Stewart as Captain Picard instead. Having such an old and bald actor as Picard wasn't what Roddenberry intended, but it was a move that ultimately turned him into an on-screen icon. And no one had anything to say afterwards. Number 2. Back in the 1960s, the first television sets had only just appeared, and everyone was looking to buy one. Unfortunately, it was unlike anything it is today, with black and white screens dazzling millions of viewers with entertainment. But it was a problem for the creators of Star Trek, who initially intended the character to have a red hue. The red was intended to completely distinguish him from the rest of the humans. But it didn't just distinguish him, it turned him into a very dark character. Yes, red didn't seem to work very well on these old black and white screens. So the characters changed this, pushing the story into a different direction, with Spock featuring copper-based blood that would naturally turn his complexion to green instead. It worked wonders on older black and white screens. Number 3. William Shatner, who was cast as the beloved Captain Kirk, didn't come from a similar kind of acting background. He actually came from a series of darker films from the horror niche, like Incubus and The Intruder. So, when he appeared on the episode The Twilight Zone, fans were left in disbelief to see him being afraid of a small gremlin on the wing of a plane. It surely added an element of humor to his character for those who didn't see him in such roles, like modern audiences have with Boston Legal. But even before Shatner was cast, someone else was intended to lead the Enterprise. Number 4. NBC and fans who saw the original pilot, The Cage, were horrified by the role played by Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Pike. So, they outright rejected the series. Hunter subsequently severed ties with the production, leaving the creators with a problem and without a main star. But the writers didn't panic. Instead, a call was made to William Shatner, completely recasting the role and creating the legendary figure that is Captain James T. Kirk. It was a brilliant move that ultimately led to an iconic role, while keeping Captain Pike in the back pocket. But he was about to come back. Number 5. The role, somewhat darker than that of Captain Kirk, was not to be lost entirely. It was merely delayed, and when 1986 came around, creators were fishing for ideas. Then the original pilot came back up. So in the 2-part episode, The Menagerie, fans got their first glimpse of Captain Pike, in a scene that saw Spock actually carry a wounded and battle-scarred captain to planet Talos 4. But the origin of Captain Pike would still not be revealed until way down the line. At least the special effects used in the episode worked to enhance the drama, but no one knew exactly how much damage it would cause down the line. Number 6. Long before safety ever became a concern, both actors and stunt doubles took tons of risk. Even special effects designers did their best to take things to the next level, but with no regard to the safety of the actors. It led to, well, let's just call it some real battle scars. In one scene, Shatner, or Captain Kirk, came face to face with a Gorn, and the only way he could defeat it was to create an explosion. Unfortunately, it had long-term repercussions. Both Shatner and Nimoy were left with tinnitus. But it didn't deter Captain Kirk, with the actor becoming a major advocate for the disease. A famous musician got a hold of me cold. I didn't know him. He knew I got it because I was the official spokesman for tinnitus at one period. And I talked him down and encouraged him to do habituation. You know, the white sound. Because I was asked when I first got it how it affected my life from 1 to 10. It was a 9.5. Now, I don't hear it except when you and I are talking about it. Perhaps modern technology would have been more effective in protecting the actors. At least, we got something new from the series. Number 7. Star Trek is set in the future, 2265 to be exact. But back in the 1970s, the only real method of communication was a telephone. Not just any telephone, but something connected to wire. Adding this to the Enterprise would sound silly, and far from opening up the imagination of viewers. So, Gene Roddenberry had to come up with a plan. One that would force creative designer and director Matt Jeffries and prop builder Wah-Ming Chang to think a little outside the box. So, Jeffries came up with a flip phone, something never seen before, which didn't need any wires and allowed for communication. The idea was later adapted by mobile phone companies, and the Motorola Dynatac 8000X was finally released in 1983. Now, it didn't have the same flip feature, but this would be corrected in the 90s. Perhaps without Star Trek, we'd still be using landlines. Number 8. When the planet of Vulcan was finally revealed in the 1967 episode Amok Time, Roddenberry needed something unique to associate with the Vulcans. However, nothing stood out. Everything seemed stale, and the task was handed over to Leonard Nimoy to come up with something interesting. And interesting, well, that was right up his alleyway. Nimoy immediately remembered a day when he was a child attending a service at an Orthodox Jewish synagogue, even recalling the moment. They get their talents over their heads, and they start this chanting. I think it's called Dutchening. And my father told me, don't look. So, everyone's got their eyes covered with their hands, or they've got their talent down over their faces. And I hear this strange sound coming from them. They're not singers, they were shouters. It was all discordant. It was chilling. I thought, whoa, something major is happening here. So I peeked and saw their hands stick up beneath their talents like this. Today, this Hebrew blessing is used for far more different reasons than it was originally intended, and has become synonymous with Spock and the Vulcans. But fans wanted more. Number 9. A big part of Star Trek was the fans. But watching it on television screens each week was not enough. Fans needed more. They wanted to feel a part of the adventure, and a pressure began mounting on the franchise. So, in 1971, the first Star Trek video game was released. It was a text-based game, encapsulating the first few years of the franchise. But as technology grew, they demanded more and more. Something that actually frustrated Shatner, but I'll get to that in a second. To give the fans what they wanted, the franchise released a whopping 125 games in the following 5 decades, essentially monopolizing the video game industry. At least the actors got a little bonus pay from the proceeds. Well, not that they needed it back then. Number 10. Back in the 1960s, pay was a problem, and I mean a big problem. And if the show wanted any form of success, hiring top-notch actors that NBC approved of was absolutely critical to its success. But money was tight, with most of it going into the production and stage that gave fans an out-of-this-world experience. So, Gene Roddenberry came up with a solution, offering main actor William Shatner a whopping $5,000 per episode during the first season. But he would only get a raise of $500 for each subsequent season. It worked, and the star was on board, going on to earn an eye-watering $100 million in pay and residual checks from the show. But Leonard Nimoy wasn't actually bothered by this. Number 11. On screen, Captain Kirk and Spock were like brothers. But when money becomes a problem, such a relationship can quickly turn sour. This didn't happen in Star Trek. In fact, the 2 main cast members are true friends in real life, with Shatner even penning a book, Leonard, My 50-Year Friendship with a Remarkable Man. In the book, he often refers to the relationship between him and Nimoy, even claiming that he was the only man the actor was ever close to. The book went on to be a bestseller, unlike Star Trek, which almost got canceled. Again. Number 12. There ain't many ass-kicking women in the Star Trek series. Well, maybe just a few like Lieutenant Uhura, but after 3 seasons, a slump in ratings, and few people of adult age having any interest in the series, the future was bleak. In fact, the show was canceled in 1969, having run for just 3 seasons, with NBC pulling the plug due to low advertising revenue. Fans were livid, hateful, and ready to protest. So, after thousands of fan letters, hate mail, and even threats. Yes, you heard that right. Some idiots even threatened NBC execs. But it worked. The show was once again brought back, and just a few years later, at the launch of the Star Trek convention in 1972, its popularity exploded. But it didn't just make the actors and creators rich. Now even the execs were quiet, as the Benjamin Franklins kept rolling in. Perhaps this is why the women kept on dressing like Playboy bunnies. Number 13. Back in the 1960s and early 70s, women starring in films were always clad in long dresses and pants. But fans, especially men, always desired more, and one of these men was creator Gene Roddenberry. His first attempt to diversify the show failed when Majel Barrett, his wife, was cast as number 1. But it failed. Meanwhile, men were still obsessing over the likes of Marilyn Monroe, and miniskirts became a fashion trend. So, Roddenberry acted. He cast nearly every woman in the series with the same style, a tight shirt and a mini dress, to live out his own fantasy perhaps, or just to bring in some more male viewers. Nevertheless, it worked a treat, even though the true reason will probably never be revealed. I mean, it's not like we can ask Gene about the plan, especially given his ridiculous burial. Number 14. It's not like anyone believed the news that Gene Roddenberry wanted his ashes buried in space when it was revealed following his death. It felt like a hoax, a final moment of brilliance to remember him by. In fact, how would this even be possible, and who was going to sign off on such a ridiculous idea? It probably wasn't going to be NASA. Then, in 1992, aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia, it became a reality. Roddenberry's ashes were loaded, and the shuttle entered orbit. His ashes were scattered in space. But that's not all. Just 5 years later, aboard Celestis' Founders flight, an even larger chunk of his remains found its way into space. Even more, his widow, Majel Barrett, also chose to have a portion of her ashes join him for the everlasting journey through the cosmos. And that's not the only thing to happen in space. Number 15. In the episode Plato's Stepchildren, released in 1968, a blooming romance between Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura was leading to something interesting. But there was a very big problem the creators had to overcome. Race mixing was kind of taboo in the 1960s. Segregation was still a thing, and fans didn't really know in what direction the episode was going. But Roddenberry didn't care about social norms, constraints, or anyone telling him what to do. So, he went for it, proving once again that he was a trailblazer. The moment was iconic, and the first interracial kiss on television took place. And guess what? No one was bothered by it. Unlike Malcolm McDowell, who feared for his life. Number 16. When the first Star Trek film, Star Trek Generations, released, a villain was needed. But this wasn't just any villain. It was Malcolm McDowell, cast as Dr. Tolian Soren. The problem is, fans didn't like him very much, and this pushed their anger over the edge. Dr. Soren had to end the life of Captain Kirk, one of the most beloved characters in the series. And fans, well, they didn't like this one bit. So, what followed was an onslaught of letters to the actor, all with threats that left him fearing for his life. It went so far that the studio had to hire private security for his press work in New York. At least, he didn't go on to antagonize fans, like the beloved Captain Kirk. Number 17. With the rise of the series came the rise of opportunities, more specifically, the rise of William Shatner. But even though the thespian with his quirky cadence captured the heart of fans, his real-life persona made him a bit of a prick. In a 1986 skit on Saturday Night Live, the befuddled star played himself attending the newly named convention Trekkers. But when the questions from fans got ultra nerdy, he snapped. And that's not where it stopped. Shatner later even penned a book called Get a Life, taking even more swipes at the fans of the show. Perhaps people should just give the man a little space. But Star Trek ain't the only iconic series, so make sure to smash that like button and check out this next video.